You talk about work ethic. I did a lot of drop sets. I would go very heavy. When I trained for shows, I'd have to have 2 training partners to keep up with me.
What's up, everybody? This is the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I am your host, Ben Pekulski. Today, I'm going to sit down with a legend of the bodybuilding game. One of the guys who literally was a pioneer in our sport all the way back to the late 1970s and all through the 80s. Rich Gaspari was a champion in the bodybuilding sport, placed second in the Mr. Olympia numerous times behind the great Lee Haney. He won the first ever Arnold Classic. I think it was 1988, and literally is an icon in the sport. He's now gone on to create his own supplement company, which you may have heard of, sponsored athletes like Flex Lewis, Hidetaka Yamagishi, Iris Kyle, Catherine LaFrancois, some amazing athletes over his tenure at the top of the sport. Now, Rich has got a really interesting story, right? He was one of the first guys to ever come to the sport. He became a champion very, very young. As early as 19, he won the Junior Nationals. 21, he got his pro card. 22, he was competing in the Mr. Olympia, ended up finishing third. He tells me all about that stuff, how he trained, what his mistakes were, what he would do differently now if he were competing. Some really interesting insights, and ultimately how they ate back then. And, some people say that the bodybuilders of the 70s, 80s, and 90s were better than the bodybuilders of today. So I asked Rich that specifically and said, hey, tell me what you think was the difference. Was it the nutrition? Was it the supplementation? Was it the training, or was it the drugs, or a combination of all of them? And Rich and I get into all of those interesting topics. Rich is an absolutely incredible gentleman who, took his Gaspari Nutrition to $100 million net or gross revenue in 2011. And 3 years later, as he'll tell you in the episode, ended up claiming bankruptcy. So he's been to the top, he's been to the bottom, and now he's back to the top and thriving with his business, Gaspari Nutrition. And he told me he's going to be down here to train with me soon, which I'm really looking forward to, showing him around the Muscle Intelligence lab and kicking his butt a little bit, showing him the intelligent way to train. I hope you guys love this episode with Rich Gaspari. Head over and follow him on Instagram, social media. He would love to hear from you and get some feedback on this amazing conversation. Enjoy. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I'm sitting here in Columbus, Ohio, and I've got a guy sitting beside me who has inspired me from the time I began bodybuilding. One of the first bodybuilders I ever looked at in the magazine, and I don't want to make you feel old, man, but more to express my gratitude for you. Known for his work ethic, known for his conditioning. Now he's built one of the greatest brands in the fitness industry and in the world. Rich Gaspari, man.
Thank you for being here, Ben.
Thank you for being here, man.
Yeah.
Making the time. I know you're extremely busy, and your brand is still flourishing after 20 years. And I wanted to start there because for the people that don't know Rich, Gaspari Nutrition's been around since
1998.
Wow.
I started the brand out of my mom's basement, actually. So, when you talk about success stories, people saw me as this top professional bodybuilder. But, after I retired, I went through some hard times, went personally bankrupt, sold everything off, moved back to my parents' house, and said I got to figure something out to make money because I was making money as a professional bodybuilder. And back then, in the 80s and 90s, I was able to do very well because I was a top bodybuilder. But
sure, and you got paid for guest posings.
Yeah, guest posings, seminars, contracts with Weider, and I got injured, and from that injury, wasn't able to compete no more, and I was in my early 30s. I had to figure out to do something, and I just sat there.
What was the injury?
Actually, I herniated 2 discs in my neck.
Training?
I was training. I was actually getting ready. The injury came on, and I could see an atrophy in my right side from my right tricep into my back. And I noticed, as I was competing, even though I was working harder and harder, that my body wasn't getting into the condition that I should get in.
Right.
And if you have nerve damage, it's literally impossible to really do anything, no matter how hard of a work ethic you have and how hard you diet or what you do, you're just going to have that problem. And you could see it in a lot of bodybuilders. You know, I saw it in Ronnie Coleman, you know, his last years.
For sure.
It was unfortunate that I was very young that happened. And what I was born with, unfortunately, with a military neck where one of my discs it was a C4, C5, didn't exist. It was totally just fused. So the disc above it and the disc below it were under extreme pressure. So, you know, when people are into training, you know, they always say it's lower back, but a lot of the issues with bodybuilders are the neck and the lower back. Sure. Both those areas are the weakest link in any bodybuilder.
Your training is almost like mythical when it comes to these young aspiring bodybuilders who don't know Rich. Look him up on YouTube. But like, to me, it was mythical from a perspective of like, there's so many stories out there of like how hard you trained and how nobody could keep up. And that was what really inspired me. And there's some really interesting stories I've heard about places you used to go and like lock yourself down to train. Tell me some of that stuff, man. I'd love to hear how you prepared.
You did say it right. You know, and I was just a crazy guy when it came to training. You know, when I moved to California. Let me just go backtrack. You know, I won the junior nationals at 19 years old. And from there, I got an offer to work at a Gold's Gym.
Definitely Mr. Connors?
Yeah, Mr. Connors, who's probably seen you as well. So he offered me a job at his one of his gyms and actually ownership of one of the gyms in the Valley. So I took the job and I said, shoot, I got an opportunity, you know, in my teenage years and 20 years old. I'm going to move to California. So I took the job a year later at 20 years old. I won the junior nationals. I went into the nationals, came in 5th place my first try. I went in as a heavyweight. When he saw me, you know, Ed said, like, you need to go into the light heavyweights and you'll probably clean up the class and turn pro. I got a job offer at this Gold's Gym in Reseda in the Valley. You can work there. And for me, I saw Reseda on the map back. I don't know if you guys, your listeners now know about California. Reseda was close to Woodland Hills. Woodland Hills was where Joe Weider was. Yeah. And I wanted to be able to see Joe Weider. That was the guy that if I saw Joe Weider, he was going to make me a champion. Right. Or I was going to show that I'm going to be one of his top champions. So I took the job, moved out there. I trained like an animal. When I won the junior nationals, you know, some of the weights I was lifting, you know, my squat was like 785. Wow. I can bench, you know, 525. So I worked out and I would do high reps.
Was that 19?
I was at 20 years old doing those kind of weights. Squatting, say, what is it? You're a big squatter. 485? 5 plates.
Right, 45.
For 35 reps.
Wow.
Crazy shit like that I would do. Because I would start reading the magazines with Tom Platz.
Dude, I did the same thing.
And I read his articles on legs, and I said, you know what? If he could do it, I could do it. And
that's what it takes. That's what I do.
Yeah, and I know you're known for your legs. I was also known for my legs. It was like one of my better body parts. So whatever Tom Platz did, I was going to do and do it better. Yep. So when I went to California and I went to Venice Gold's Gym, I went out there as a 20-year-old kid working out, and I started doing legs. And when I was training legs, I had one of you guys or listeners don't know who these guys are. They're called the Barbarian Brothers.
Sure, yeah.
They're 2 of these guys. They're one of the strongest guys in bodybuilding. So one of the guys came up to me. I don't know which one it was, but he goes, hey, can I work in you with legs? Right. I said, sure, work in with me. So I started doing set after set. He started seeing me do like, you know, 485 for like 35, 50 reps with 405. He could not keep up with me. Right. I got him to throw up. so he walked. It's always the goal. So it was great to see, you know, one of the Barbarian. He's like, "Who are you?" Right. I said, "I'm Rich Gaspari, the next Mr. Universe, the next pro. Right. Watch out for me." I was this cocky kid, you know, moving to California. I said, "Jersey, man." Yeah, I said, "I'm East Coast. Right. You guys in the West Coast are pussies. Yeah. And I'm going to take over." That's how I was as a kid. So I moved out there. I got the job, and I started training in this gym that I managed. And who was there was Lee Haney. Now, Lee Haney he just came 3rd in the Olympia. He was like a promising pro, you know, that he was going to win the Olympia. He saw me. He comes up to me. He goes, hey, boy. He goes, I'm going to make you an offer. You want to train with me? I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia, and I want to win this year, and you bust your ass. You know, that's how we talk. And I said, let's hit it on. Let's be training partners. And I looked at him. I said, holy crap, I get this pro.
Did you know who he was at that time?
I did know who he was because I was a fan of bodybuilding. Right. I remember I was this fan that loved Tom Platz. And I moved to California, and I was seeing all my heroes, that I moved there to, and he was one of the newcomers. And I said, shit, yeah, I want to train with you. I had more of a powerlifting training philosophy.
Right.
Through Lee Haney, he taught me how to like train the muscles more, total, a contraction of the muscle, total, extension of the muscle, working the muscles properly. And when he did that, I totally changed my physique. I was very bottom heavy. My waist was rather thick. I mean, I had a little bit of a wider waist, because of my hip ratio. So I had to really change my physique. So what did I have to do? It was actually, I did something different. Like I had to push him on legs to build his legs up. I had to stop training legs because my legs were huge. When I won the junior nationals and the nationals, I just needed bigger shoulders, more chest, bigger arms. So I focused on those body parts and did less on legs, but pushed Lee to train his legs hard. And that year, he won his first Olympia. I won the the nationals and the Mr. Universe. Back in those days, you had to win the nationals, and then you went to the Mr. Universe or the World Championships. You didn't turn pro winning the nationals. You had to go to the universe, which everybody in the world competed in. So each, Mr. Canada, Mr. Belgium, Mr. France, all went against each other. And that person who won that show was then the world champion, Mr. Universe, and you were pro.
Did he get to do the Olympia? The guy who won the pro card, or he?
He also could get to do the Olympia. Right. So I got to win the Mr. Universe. And after I won the show, Joe Weider gave me the award. And he goes, "Would you like to go into Mr. Olympia?" I said, "Absolutely not. I'm not ready for the Mr."
You were 21 years old?
Yeah, I said, "I am not going into Mr. Olympia because I want to be ready to be on that stage. I'm not just going to go on that stage to be just background.
Right.
I want to go on that stage and win the show."
Yeah.
And
you were 21 years old?
Yes, I was 21 years old. So Lee Haney won his first Olympia.
What a great year that was.
Yeah, it was the best year.
84?
It was 1984. It was just 21. I just turned 21. I was a baby. I think about it now. I said, shit, there's not many 21-year-olds that are doing that.
You're on top of the world.
Yeah,
at that point, man,
and
sure.
I was on top of the world because from that point, I was living in California. Lee Haney was living in California. He moved back to Atlanta, Georgia, and then I moved back to New Jersey. And right there, then we became rivals. Because then, the first year I got to compete in the Mr. Olympia, I got third place on my first try at 22 years old. I should have won the Night of the Champions, which was the New York Pro that it's called today.
Yeah, who won that one?
Albert Beckles, who then, he was the oldest, and I was the youngest competitor in that show. But everybody booed when I lost that show. When you talk about work ethic, I had a principle where I did a lot of drop sets. I would go very heavy and then drop the weight, descending sets, up and down sets. I would do everything to stimulate a muscle.
What everyone now would call overtraining.
Yeah, what they call it. And I would do that type of training. And when I trained for shows, I'd have to have 2 training partners to keep up with me.
Dude, I did the same thing. I never heard anybody else do that. I was the only guy. One for the first hour, one for the second hour. I did the same thing.
So I had those 2 training partners because if I had one training partner, normally they would burn out after about a month. They'd be gone.
Right.
So, I had a lot of great guys that were really good bodybuilders that were like, I can't keep up with you.
That's great.
It's just too hard.
That's great.
And I love to train that way. I would push myself to the limit. I remember doing legs and, doing 100 reps on leg press and popping blood vessels in my eyes and saying, shit, look at that. I know I trained hard. Just crazy shit. But I was in my 20s. I didn't know any better.
Right.
And I just pushed myself to the limit because I felt I wasn't genetically endowed like Lee Haney.
Sure.
So I felt I had to push that muscle to another limit to get it to grow. Now, maybe I was wrong, but I was able to get myself to get second place 3 years in a row, win the first Arnold Classic, became 2 years in a row Grand Prix champion, with a guy that everyone said was limited in his genetics. So, I felt that I did the right thing, but
you proved him wrong.
I think that all thinking about it now, I could have been able to pace myself differently so that I could have lasted longer because by 34, I was done.
You don't need to last longer, man. You made your mark.
Yeah.
You did an amazing job. Talk to me about this concept that people have now in their mind about overtraining and how that didn't play into your reality. Like, do you feel as though the way you trained helped or hindered you?
I think it helped me. I mean, overstating is a state of mind. Like people who overtrain, if they overtrain, they start losing muscle. They start not being able to sleep. I mean, there's signs of overtraining.
Sure.
If you're feeling great, with your diet and your training, you're seeing strength increases, you're seeing changes in your body, you know, for the better, then you're not overtraining.
Right.
But I mean, people that do go into an overtrained state, they don't recognize that. And I was able to also recognize when I was taking in maybe too low a carbohydrate, or maybe I was overtraining and I would set back a little bit on my training. But I did have to push myself much harder than a lot of people. And it's just how I was. If I didn't train that hard, I just didn't feel like I was training.
That's what I said. Like when I was competing, I used to say, if I train the way these guys, I'd look like a swimmer. That's no joke. Hey, what's up, everybody? I interrupt this episode with Rich Gaspari to bring you a special message from the MI40 Nation. I want each and every one of you to head to MI40Nation.com and sign up and join me in the best muscle building community on the planet. I give you all the best information that I've accumulated over the last 20 years. My new program, which is the best information I've ever put out, is called Hypertrophy Mastery. It's a month-by-month program teaching you each body part and how to master it, not the way I train, but how you should train for your body. And that's the uniqueness of it, is I don't advocate training any particular way other than the exact way that fits your body. So I don't teach you, hey, this is how to do a bench press. What I do is I teach you principles. I teach you like, hey, this is how to set up for you. This is how to overcome the bottlenecks for you. So I want to teach you a thought process to empower you to build your greatest body. It's not just about, hey man, here's a program and go do it. And oh, unfortunately, you couldn't build that body part. No, I don't believe weak body parts exist. I think they're a thing of the past and a paradigm that is just restricted by your ability to actually put tension through it. So I'm going to teach you the best setup, the best exercises for your body to maximize muscle building at hypertrophymastery.com. Or you can head over to MI40Nation.com where you can get Hypertrophy Mastery or any one of the other 30 plus programs that I've built over the last 7 years of leading the muscle building industry on the internet. I hope you guys join me, and I look forward to hearing from every one of you. And enjoy the rest of the episode with Rich Gaspari. Tell me about your nutrition back then, man. Because there's a lot of speculation of how guys in the 70s and 80s ate, and I don't know if anybody's ever really talked about it. I've never really heard anybody say like, "Hey, this is what my nutrition
Well, you know,
like."
back in the 70s and even to the early 80s, most bodybuilders followed like a diet that were basically low carbohydrate right before a show. So they take out their carbs, go on a high protein diet.
No fat.
No fats, or actually it would be fats and proteins.
But like what sources? Give me an example.
Well, people would eat like, you know, just straight eggs, full eggs, beef, chicken, but almost like only 50 grams of carbs. So it was almost like keto. It was almost like carbs would be basically roughage, like greens.
Yeah.
Now, that did not work for me. When I followed that diet, I would shrink, feel weak. So I started saying like, I need to eat, you know, carbohydrates. There's actually a trainer. He's a guru trainer that actually Chris Aceto followed him. Was a guy named Bob Gruskin.
Don't know.
Bob Gruskin was a trainer back in the 70s, 80s, and guys like Chris Aceto followed all his principles that he's using today in a lot of his pros.
Really?
So he was always telling me, he came to me as a guy that followed like young aspiring bodybuilders and teenagers, and basically, he would say, like, Rich, you got to take your carbs. You got to take complex carbs. They're the fuel for your body, you know. But you got to take the right type of carbs. You got to stay away from simple sugars. You got to stay away from, refined sugars. Baked potatoes, brown rice, sweet potatoes, oatmeal. So I started, implementing them into my diet and following more of a 40-40-20 diet, and that worked really well for me. As soon as I started implementing actually slightly higher, maybe 45%, 50% carbs, 35% protein, and the rest fats, I saw my body just start to gain size, start to feel stronger. So I never went on a low carbohydrate diet from then on as a pro. I was known to be one of the most ripped bodybuilders, and I've always put in, carbs into my diet.
Do you think science, the way it is now, helps guys or cripples guys? Because, that much information, sometimes people, and it sounds like, I did it, is overthink a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I need sugar, I need this, I'm overtraining. And then, obviously science has its benefits. I'd just like to hear your opinion on, comparing against what you did compared to the guys now. Do you think this evolution in science has been helpful or crippling?
I think science is very helpful. It's how you use it. I sat there and put everything on a journal. So I was one of the first guys to do that. No one really kept journals back in the day. So I would keep my notebook and journals. And actually, Dorian Yates says, I attributed my success because Rich Gaspari, wrote in an article about using a journal. So my journal would be my carbs, my fats, my proteins, how I felt, my energy levels, what I weighed, you know, everything that I felt that day, I would put down on paper.
Yeah. You still have those?
Yeah, they're put away. I have those notebooks. And those notebooks actually helped me because day to day I would look at those and make changes. And those changes would be either, you know, I felt really tired. Why am I feeling tired? Well, my carbs are a little lower. Let me increase my complex carbohydrates. You know, let me see what happens if I put in some fruits and I put it in and see how I would look. And see, I would always see a 2 to 3 day change in my body. Something I discovered that I did this way back, and now people do it today, and it's big as a gluten-free diet. I was following gluten-free diets back in the 80s when no one even knew what gluten-free was.
Right.
But what I saw is that people that had gluten allergies would actually have water retention. And I feel everyone has gluten allergies.
At some level,
so
yeah.
if you're at this extreme level of trying to make your skin so thin, and if you cut out gluten, because I would experiment. If I eat bread and I eat a sweet potato, why do I not get ripped eating bread, but I do on a sweet potato? It was the gluten. So I cut out that gluten, and then I noticed significant differences before a show. I was able to get myself to another level of extreme ripness. I mean, I was known for being the first guy with striated glutes, and I was following a gluten-free diet. And, you know, people are like, how did you know about that? I said, I just read about it. I was very much into like reading the science on nutrition and what to do. So if you're saying science, you know, you can overthink it, but any scientist, they would experiment on trial and error.
Sure.
So if you're putting it down on paper and you're going to see every 3 days of what it's going to do to your body, then it makes sense. But if you're just going to try to throw darts against the wall, it's not going to work. Everything has to be planned in what you do.
Tell me about some of the things you did that, looking back on it, we think was a little bit silly, a little bit crazy. Like, I'm sure we all experiment with things, and you're like, God, that was dumb. I don't know why I did that.
What have I done really dumb? I've probably done a lot of stupid, dumb things. You know, I experimented on different training principles, you know, doing training a body part every day to see if I can get that body part. You know, there was something where if you overtrain a body part every day and then you cut back on it, the body part will grow.
Yep.
I mean, that actually is, there's some significance to it, but I would do that maybe to an extreme.
Right.
You know, I've torn muscles that I feel that I could have avoided. You know, when I was very, very lean, I had a pec tear. And why that happened is because I just got myself to that point where I was so lean, I should have lightened up my weights, focused on more, you know, contraction and squeezing. And I still went to that heavy, heavy weight because I was afraid it was going to shrink, which was stupid of me doing that. Right. And boom, I tore a pec. So those kind of things like that, you know, thinking that you need to use extreme heavy weights when your body is down to a very low body fat is not a good move. I mean, you should keep yourself lifting to a point where, you know, you're using heavy resistance to train that body to failure. But I don't think it's necessary to have these extreme weights that you see with some of these pros.
That's what I'm looking for, because there's so many kids out there now making a lot of mistakes, and I think the thing that we, you know, maybe one of the biggest things we can learn from the people that come before us is all these lessons of what not to do. And you know, I try to always, you know, what can I tell these guys that I did wrong, and be as transparent as I can. Like, don't do that. That didn't work. You know, there's a lot of things that can save them time.
Well, exercises like behind the neck presses, really bad exercise. And I love behind the neck presses when I was a kid. But if you do those, you know you're going to destroy your shoulders. Behind the neck pull down, same thing. All these type of exercises that are not natural motions for your body to move. You know, I learned a lot, you know, reading about biomechanics and kinesiology. You have to just let the body go with the plane of motion. Right. Don't go against it and try to figure these ways of trying to go, you know, to a point that you're going to injure yourself, especially when you're using heavy weights. So I think that's a big problem that a lot of people do. You know, overtraining where you do feel the signs that your body's starting to, you know, plateau, or you start feeling sick, or you start, you know, feeling tired, burnt out. You have something called where you feel this burnt out when you just don't feel like training. It's not laziness either, because you can have that too. You don't feel like going to the gym when you're dieting, and you got to feel your body just to know, like, you know what, I'm going to back off. And when I turned pro, I had the ability to know, like, you know, today I'm not training. I feel like today's a bad day to train, and I just wouldn't train, and just like sometimes fill up, you know, take in a junk day. A lot of people are afraid. You know, as an example, I'm at the show here. I sponsor the Arnold Amateur, and I have this egg protein that I'm selling. It's a new product. And they're like, oh, I'd like to try that, but I'm on a diet. I said, do you really think that a sip is going to mess you up for your show? You know, and then one of the trainers was there, and I said, are you telling this person that if they take a sip of this, they're going to lose the show? Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. But that's how extreme people get, to not even like take a sip of something because they feel they're going to lose.
You know, I had a conversation with Josh Leonardowicz about that about 3 weeks ago, and the reason he says he doesn't do it, and it makes sense, is it's a gateway, right? Because once you get a little taste of something, you're like, oh, but it tasted really good.
Let me have some more.
All right.
That's true. That's true. When it comes to, say, junk food or something.
Right.
And I was able to take junk food, put it in my mouth, get the flavor, spit it out. You know? And I've done stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that's discipline. You have to have the discipline. But if you're going to say that, you know, drinking a sugar-free egg white protein,
30 calories or
that you're sipping, that's going to be about 15 calories, is going to affect your body.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right. Well, so what was the best frequency you used for training body parts? Like, did you enjoy, you know, body parts once a week, twice a week, every 5 days? When you're at your peak, how often did you train body parts?
Well, I followed the double split. I trained my body parts twice a week, train my body 6 days a week. So I would double split my body parts, train, you know, 3 days, my entire body, and then repeat it again in 3 days. So that's all.
The best results like that too, man. I think
and today they think that's overtraining. So
again, it's all who's doing it, what's your recovery, like what does it look like outside of the gym, right? I think if training twice a week is a problem for you, that's the least of your worries, right? There's other things happening that are much bigger problems.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like I said, it's all philosophy. I see people now, a lot of top pros, like I said, they train once a week, their body parts once a week. They train their body 4 to 5 days a week. But you know what I see in today's bodybuilders, they don't get as crisp. They don't get as dense. I mean, there are some dense, crisp bodybuilders, but the majority are not.
Let's talk about that, because I actually talked to John Meadows about that recently as well. And guys who have been around a while, I've got my perspective on why that is. And I think it's multifaceted. I don't think it's just one thing. But I'd love to hear your opinion as to why you think bodybuilders now just don't get as conditioned. And you can talk literally about anything.
I think a lot has to do with, you know, these guys want to get much bigger. And I noticed I was at this phase when I was in bodybuilding, you know, called the end of the golden era, into the late, you know, 80s, into the 90s. Then afterward came Dorian Yates. We could not get to a certain size because I got myself, when I started getting bigger, I noticed that my waist started getting thicker. Even though I was shredded or ripped, I had to keep my body weight at the max 220. If I went above that, I started seeing thicker obliques. So I was penalized. If I started getting bigger, the judges would say, you're getting too big. Even though you look hard, you're starting to look blocky. So I would, you know, basically stop and shrink myself and streamline myself down. When you can get that streamline, your body can get denser and harder, I believe. I mean, I believe a lot has to do with the drugs that bodybuilders are taking. You know, it's much different. I mean, to me, I don't even know half of what the guys know today, what they take, and it's just a different era of gaining that much size. I think the less frequency in training also changes how your physique looks and getting denser. There are bodybuilders that are just naturally dense. I was a naturally dense bodybuilder. You know, I had one of our athletes was like Branch Warren. He's just a naturally dense bodybuilder. That's his genetics.
Right.
So.
Yeah. How different was the drugs back then? You don't have to talk too extensively about that, but do you think we're using more now or more then?
I think we were the guys that kind of experimented, to taught the guys how to take certain drugs. Like drugs like GH were very new. So no one really knew how to take GH. And back then, the GH that was available was made from Rhesus Monkey. You know, they weren't even like, it was like very, very...
fringe,
yeah. So I think that I think we used a lot less when it came to the amount of steroids that they take today, and I think it was kind of like we taught the next era on what to do, like insulin. Insulin was, I never used insulin, I never competed, but I've seen athletes when I was competing use insulin, and guys like collapsing, not using too much, not knowing how to use it with carbs. And I think that's something also that we kind of did the experimenting that taught the next generation on how to use it properly.
Right.
So, and then once they used it properly, they were able to gain size and get bigger and do all the things that they're able to do today. But like anything, if you look at any sport, it always or how they're training and how they train today are two different ways of training. Just from what they did in the past, they learned from that and not what not to do,
right,
or how to train, better.
Who's your biggest inspiration?
Well, my biggest inspiration was always Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, when I was a kid,
he was probably just still relevant when you were a kid.
He just retired.
Yeah.
Well, his last show was 1975, but then he came back in 80. But I just read about him, as a kid. I was 12 years old.
Right.
The first time I got to, it was kind of funny. My friend, his father collected old Muscle Builder, Joe Weider Muscle Builder magazines. And one day, just out of the blue, I was in his basement, and he had his weights, and he had stacks and stacks of magazines. And I went in there, and I started, what the hell is this? I started looking at these guys, Robbie Robinson, Frank Zane, Franco Columbu, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, and I'm like, oh, my God, these guys are like superheroes. Look at these guys with muscle. So I'd go to this kid's house just to read these magazines. Even though he wanted to go play ball, I was like, oh, let me stay in your basement and read these magazines. And I would always look at, back then, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger that was getting the most coverage. And I was just amazed by, he was very charismatic. You can see that, as a kid. I saw Conan, that was a big movie to see. And I got his book. I guess it was Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding.
Right.
Is that his first one or the one? One of the books where he's on a mountaintop and he's doing a one-arm bicep.
Yeah, that's I think the encyclopedia.
So anyways, I got to go to the mall, and I didn't even have any money back then. I was like 13 years old. I went to the mall, and this long line for Arnold, and I went to go there, and I just had a little piece of paper, and I put it there, and I said, someday, Arnold, I'm going to be like you. And he looked at me. He goes, you have to train hard, eat right, and believe in yourself. And he signed the paper, and he sent me away. And, it's funny because years later, I won the Arnold Classic. And then 25 years later, I got his, what is it called?
The award.
I'm sorry. The Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm losing my head. I got the Lifetime Achievement Award, and I gave that speech to say, as that aspiring 13-year-old kid, Arnold was.
How cool would it have been to still have that paper?
I know. I lost it. I lost this. He doesn't give autographs that much either, Right. So it was just cool that, I remembered him when I moved to California. When I told you I was there at 20 years old, I got to go to he was in World Gym then. There was a World Gym, and he was there all the time. And he came up to me and said, hey, kid, what are you doing? What are you competing in? So, even though that time he was a big actor. So, he inspired me a lot because it's just I saw wow, you can really do something with bodybuilding. But I did know that, I also needed to be more entrepreneurial, because I did see bodybuilders. It was funny. I was a teenager, and I watched this bodybuilder, and I don't want to mention his name, but I was in a gym, and he actually beat Franco Columbu. So I was this teenager, and I saw this guy. He was driving this beat-up old car. He was basically a janitor. And I looked at him, and I say, I definitely don't want to be like him, even though he looks great. Right. I don't want to be like him. So what do I got to do to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger? I didn't know I was going to be an actor, but, I was always entrepreneurial and figuring out ways to make money through bodybuilding.
Right. Tell me about, as your bodybuilding career came to an end due to injury, how you transitioned out and talk the struggles, because I think that's really where I'm living now.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your maybe your first couple of years and what your first moves were and what your thought process was.
Well, I told a little bit earlier about, I got an injury. I was unable to compete anymore. I lost my contract with Weider.
He just pulled it because
he just said, you're injured. I can't really do anything with you, so I'm going to pull the contract. And I had no money coming in. So I was going through a tough divorce. So I lost my house, and I went into personal bankruptcy. At that time, my parents, my dad had cancer. My mom was sick with Parkinson's. So,
wow.
So I go, you know what? I'm going to move back home and help them out and see what I can do to build something. So I had a gym. I was doing personal training. And when I was doing the personal training, I was giving people supplements. all my clients, I said, hey, take this, take protein, take aminos, because I believed in supplements, because as a pro bodybuilder, I believed in supplements as well, like amino acids and proteins. And so
the big horse pill amino acids.
I used to use desiccated liver, the amino acid pills. Right. Branch chains were still then, but I believed in those. Yep. So anyways, I started giving my clients supplements. Well, I noticed that my supplement sales were much bigger than, my training, or the efforts of selling supplements I was growing much more financially than sitting there trying to train all these people. So I was like I said, if I just give this guy this, I make a quick $100. But then to make $100 with him, I have to do I was charging like $50. I had to do 2 sessions with him to get that $100. See if I could sell him more products.
That's a lot of money for the 80s, man.
Yeah, I was doing
90s.
Yeah, it was mid 90s into yeah. So I was doing okay as a personal, as a trainer. But I tried to train, I tried to pay for me to train with me. I had to pay a little more because I was a pro bodybuilder. But I noticed that I could make more money selling, supplements, and I started making tens of thousands of dollars with my clients. So I was like, I think I got something here. I should do my own brand. So, I said, I want to do my own brand. And of course, the naysayers, you're never going to make a brand. Of
course.
You can't do
That's
it.
That's what fuels the fire.
Yeah, you can't do it. So I actually started investigating, going to different manufacturers in New Jersey. Actually, I see you have one of the products, Universal, used to do private labeling. So I went to those guys and I said, hey, I want to do my own brand. And they started giving me this and that. And I took some of the money I had left and I started making products, putting my label on it. And I started selling to my clients. And then for my clients, I started going out to like the tri-state area. I lived in New Jersey, so I went to the local gyms that I used to go to. I was the hero then. I said, well, if I go to these gyms, they'll buy my product.
Sure.
It wasn't necessarily true, because a lot of these gyms that when I was a pro bodybuilder, they were open the doors. When I tried to sell them something, they didn't want to buy something from me. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I really learned quickly that, to sell something is much harder. Yeah. Even though, I can get the door open because of who I was, but I had to sell them, and I had to have a relationship to build sales. Sales is not an easy thing. You have to have relationship driven. So at the beginning, it was very hard because I was going to every gym, local store to try to sell my product. And little by little, I started getting, customers and growing the Gaspari brand. I was at a local show. I would go to some of the local shows, have a booth, a 10 by 10 booth, and people would go like, wow, look at Rich Gaspari. He was a top pro. Now he's got this little booth trying to push these supplements. So I just sat there and, was, doing what I can do and push these products. And I was at a show, and I was actually would judge some of the shows, and I was there with a guy named Eric Hillman, who at that time owned Europa. So I go, I knew he had a distribution company. I said, hey, Eric, what does it take for me to get my brand with you? He goes, you're not going to be able to do this because, first of all, if you're going to buy we're going to buy the product from you. We want them on terms, meaning we're not going to pay you up front. We're going to pay you in 30 to 45 days. So are you able to do that? So I said, well, how big of a product how much are you going to buy of the products? He goes, well, it depends, I don't know. He goes, right now we don't see a demand for your brand. So he was in Charlotte. So what I did is I started calling all the local stores in Charlotte and started selling my products to all the local stores near his distribution. So then all of a sudden, the next time I saw him at a show, he goes, all of a sudden there's like a demand for your brand. Like we're seeing it in the stores in Charlotte while you're in New Jersey. So he goes, okay, I'm going to give you a shot. We're going to buy some. So his first PO with me was like $20,000. And to me, $20,000 was like $20 million. So I went to my brother and I said, can I have a loan to, I have this customer buying, can I borrow $20,000? My brother's like, $20,000? I go, well, I got a PO. I said, here it is, and I pay you back in 30 days. So my brother, gave me the money, and I was able to start the PO with them. And then from there, once I got paid, I gave my brother back his money, took the profit. Back then I had products. Today it's much harder. The profit margin was much higher.
Sure.
So I was able to take that and just keep building and building and building and building until the company, grew into a global, force, into, shoot 100 countries around the world. And we were in every channel, and the brand just became just big.
What was your biggest yearly revenue?
We did close to 100 million back in 2011. Probably one of the biggest years that we had with the products. But the big problem is we started seeing changes in the industry. The margins started shrinking. So I became almost too big, and the profit margins started to shrink and shrink and shrink.
What was the turning point where it started to come down?
Well, what happened is besides that happening to the company, I went through a divorce. And personally, the divorce really affected me because it didn't keep my eye on the ball. Another thing happened to me. I went through several lawsuits between employees, between outside forces. Gaspari had issues that affected the company where it was death by 1,000 cuts. I had so many outside things happening. And, a lot of times when people see you're down, they come after you even more. And that's kind of what happened to the company. And when we got to this point that it just it actually just put me to the point that I went into business bankruptcy with the company. And then from that point, I had to buy back shares to get into my company with someone else owning it, with only owning 30%, and then having someone else buy out the company and then owning 49%, and now coming back and then buying back the company that took till now to 2018 to be able to do this. So Gaspari's had its ups and downs.
So had you sold, like when you went into business bankruptcy?
You don't sell your company.
You just shut it down.
What happens is that you owe money to people. You go into bankruptcy because you owe money to your debtors.
Sure.
What happens is that federal government then basically puts your company into auction. You have no rights to it, to basically take whatever money that company can make to pay your debtors. Now, what I had to do is then take money, millions of dollars, and the new owner and say, here's money to buy into my own company to get back a piece of the company. But what happens is I became a minority owner of my own company. That changed where they didn't understand the business. And from that point, the business never grew like it was, because once that entrepreneur loses that fire and spirit to be able to do changes very quickly, it becomes much harder to, grow the company.
How was that to you mentally to go from $100 million a year in a short amount of time? I don't know what the time frame was to bankruptcy. When did you go bankrupt?
It was 2015.
Wow, 4 years.
Yeah.
How was that mentally, man?
Very, very hard. Very, very hard, because at the time I went into business bankruptcy, the company was still doing $65 million, in gross sales, but the margins shrank down. We owed a lot of money to the banks, owed a lot of money to vendors, and there was nothing else that I can do but file for reorg. It's called reorganization. There's different bankruptcies where you just totally go out of business, or you go into what's called reorganization. Reorganization is being able to take whatever assets you have, pay your debt a certain percent, that can clean it up, and then you start over again. That's basically how it is in the United States. So that's kind of what I had to do to get the company to come back. No matter what, this brand still has longevity. The brand has been around for, like I said, over 20 years. And even though all this happened, we're still a $20 million a year brand from that point to this point, and now profitable. But it took a long time of transition and keeping my mind focused to keep this going. When you talk about, ups and downs, I've been through low downs, and I've been through very high ups. And the one thing I always do is always believe in myself to continue on and grow. As long as you have that, I believe that, this company is still, like you said, it's longevity. This brand is an iconic brand. There's brands that still don't do what we do, that are big names, and we're still there, growing as a brand.
What's the 10 and 20-year vision for Gaspari Nutrition?
Well, Gaspari has changed a lot. I mean, the marketing, we talked earlier about how marketing has become more towards social media. The brand itself is a little bit of an older demographic. People between their late 20s into their 40s really know the brand. If you talk to a kid that's between 20, 21, 19, 20, 21.
My demographic knows the brand, right?
Yeah,
I'm 37.
You're 37. So a guy, I see anywhere between the young age of like 30 and you like your age is like definitely know the brand because 10 years ago you were in your 20s.
Sure.
15 years ago you were, your late teens or you knew the brand.
Right.
If you're in your 20s today, that kid's 10 years old. He's not going to remember the brand.
Totally. Yeah.
So, I got one of my guys here that's my national sales director. He goes, Rich, there's a 21-year-old kid, and he's like, I never heard of this brand. So we want to get back that demographic. How do we get back that demographic? The new way of marketing is through social media, through target marketing. All these different tools that are today used is what Gaspari needs to do. Changing, the genre of using younger athletes to represent. I mean, I'm still out there training my ass off, but some young kid who goes, that guy looks good. That old guy looks good.
Sure.
For his age. But
sure.
They want to know what that young kid's doing with the high, social media following. I totally get it. And that's some of the changes that we're making in the brand. I love what I'm doing. It's like here's a brand that has stands on the test of time. There's a lot of have you heard of EAS?
Of course.
They're gone.
Yeah.
They're out of business. I'm still here. There's a lot of brands that have been around and they're gone. There's a lot of new brands that you'll see come and go. But we're still here for over 20 years, and we will still be here for the next 10 years. Am I going to be here with the brand? Maybe not. I'm trying to grow the brand as great as I can.
Sure.
And just, and grow it. But one thing I do is I want to keep that legacy name. When I started this brand, I started out of my basement. My dad was dying of cancer, and he watched me on this pool table filling orders. Yeah, and I was there filling orders. And he goes, and I go, and I said, Dad, you see your name on this bottle, Gaspari? I go, this is going to be all over the world. And, my dad said something to me, and, he goes, you know what? He goes, you really followed your dream. Like, he was totally against a lot of things that I did, moving to California to be a pro bodybuilder. He wanted me to finish school. I never finished college. I basically, and this is not a good idea for any of you listeners to not finish college, but it worked for me where, I decided to follow my dream to be this pro bodybuilder, became one of the top pro bodybuilders, started my own company, believed in the vision of starting this company. And, he just said to me, he goes, I'm really proud of you. And, and when he passed on, I said, you know what? He's always looking down on me to say, don't give up, Rich. I come from an Italian, from Italian background. My dad was an immigrant. He came to this country with like $5 in his pocket. And he always said, like, he had to build what he got here. He goes, you already got a head start. You got food on the table. You got a house, a roof over your head. There's no reason why you can't be super successful.
Right.
So I always thought of that. I said, that people have lost that, that idea of that, U.S. is the land of opportunity. I still believe that. I mean, you're coming from Canada, you're living in the U.S. I guess you believe this is a place, for you to be to make moves.
Absolutely, man. I think everyone around the world wants to.
But a lot of Americans don't, and that's a
You're
shame.
right.
And, you see a lot of young Americans that don't believe in that, land of opportunity.
Sure.
You got to bust your ass, work hard. People want handouts now. It's not about handouts. It's about if you want to get something in this world, in this country, you got to work for it. Don't expect the government to give you. And I'm not trying to make this political,
right.
but you definitely need to work for what you get.
Right.
So, and that's what I believe in. And it's like everything I've got is all because of my hard work and efforts. And that's what I continue to believe in.
I believe your brand is going to continue to be successful just because you have so many trials and tribulations and lessons built under your belt. Like all you need is significance, right? It's just like, okay, well, who is significant? How do we create significance for people who are buying the product? A little demographic analysis. You know what you're doing, man.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to talk to you about that I think is, the last thing that we'll touch on is, you built this brand, and we kind of started touching on it, but there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out there who are interested in building a brand, interested in building the personal brand, or interested in building a brand that has legacy like Gaspari. I'd love to talk about some of the lessons you've acquired over the last 20 years of building this brand up to $100 million, and what are some of the golden nugget takeaways that our listeners could benefit from hearing from you?
Well, first off, plan. On anything you do, you have to make a plan. You have to set something up. A strategy in what you're going to do in a business. You can't just flounder in whatever you're going to do. Look at what you're trying to do. Like, at that time, I was trying to make the best products. As a bodybuilder, I wanted to make the best products that I believed in. I believed in supplements, and I had a passion for it. That's why I represented my products to say, you know what? I use this because I believe in it. You can't sit there and sell something you don't believe in. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to have a passion in anything they do. If you have a passion, people will see that and it'll resonate and it will help you sell. I mean, if I can be in front of anybody that I'm going to sell, and I don't want to call it sell, that I'm going to talk about my products.
Sure.
And when I do that, they're going to buy from me because they believe in what I'm saying. I'm not being a bullshit artist. If you're in it just to make money, don't do it. Whatever you do, do something that you believe because you're passionate what you believe in. Like what you're doing, you believe in what you're doing, you believe in your training principles, you believe in, the philosophies that you have, and you'll be successful. But if you're going to do this and say, you know what, I'm going to get into this because I'm going to make X amount of money, it's not going to work that way. You have to have a passion. And if you have that passion will grow into dollars and money. But a lot of people lose that focus. They're just saying, how do I make money? And that's where they lose it.
Did you know or believe that you were going to have a $100 million brand?
Did I know that? I didn't. I knew I was going to do something. I believed in my passion. I believed that if I worked hard, that I was able to can accomplish whatever I wanted to. I believed. I always sat there. I remember being in this dusty basement. By the way, I told you I started my business in my mom's basement. The house burnt down. I lost everything. I had like $50,000 in product. I lost everything. I had to go into my brother's basement, which was like an unfinished, like dingy basement. I sat there with a desk and a computer and a phone, and that's all I had. And I would package out in the cold snow packaging. So I definitely just believed in what I was doing, and sat there and just said, I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to be able to grow this business.
Belief in yourself is
you got to believe. You got to believe in yourself, but you also have to have a plan. You can't just believe in yourself without having something set to what you're going to do, and that plan can change. A business plan or whatever type of plan that you're going to put together and saying, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. If you don't do that, it's going to be very hard. And that plan can change. It can you could see in 6 months and say, you know what, I was going to do this, but actually I got to slightly tweak it to do that. Because once you get yourself involved in what you're doing, you start seeing, the changes that need to be made. Relationships are key. The one thing that I did to grow this brand is I traveled the world. As a pro bodybuilder, I was one of the most extensive travelers, guest posing, seminars. I did it all over. I did the same thing with the brand. I was able to talk to the people and travel to these places. I'm one of the first guys. I mean, now you see Ronnie Coleman doing and a lot of these other bodybuilders. I would go and do these tours, store to store to store to store to store. That builds sales.
You had a reputation for being the work machine. Like
you have to do it.
Even the athletes, like, you can't sign with Rich, man. He's going to make you do like
exactly. And you know what I would tell the athletes? I said, listen, we're going to go on a 1-month tour. We're going to travel through England. I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to make sure you're going to eat. I'm going to make sure you're going to train, but you're going to visit stores every day with me. Do you want to do it or not?
And honestly, most athletes don't want to do that.
No.
For me, I would have been like, Rich, I'll one up you, man. I'll do twice as many as you, right?
Well,
because I get it. Right?
Yeah.
But most athletes are like, what? I have to actually do work?
You're going to go and visit stores every day, sign autographs. Yeah. But I said, I promise you're going to be able, guys like Flex Lewis understood it. Hidi Yamagishi still done it.
And they're huge, right? That's why they've got huge brands.
Yes. And they were able to grow themselves. I mean, Flex grew himself. I give him kudos to what he was able to do. Now he's a legend. Be able to, I got him when no one even knew who he was. He just won the UK championships, and he was this Welsh guy that no one could even understand.
Right.
And I saw him as a great bodybuilder. I said, this kid can be really great, and started working with him, and the kid grew. But like he would say, I go, okay, Flex, we're going to go here this month. We're going to go there this month. We're going to go. But I said, I promise you're going to eat your 6 meals.
Yeah.
You're going to get to train every day.
Right.
Because that's what's most important.
And they think, right. And I think it's going to take away from training. But if you put it in perspective, like I know guys who are pro bodybuilders or were pro bodybuilders working in a factory at Walmart. Like, no exaggeration, right? There's a guy that I know who was competing in like the Tampa Pro, working for 12 to 14 hours a day in a factory at Walmart. Like, compare that against, hey, man, I got to go like flex my muscles in a tank top at GNC or something. Like, dude, you got it pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Right?
That's what I said, and that's what I did. Like I said, passion, believing in yourself, getting out to the public, relationships, all these things will grow a business. If you don't have relationships, you have nothing. I can ask for favors. I got over 20 years in the industry. I could still go to customers and say, hey, can you do this for me? And they'll do it for me as long as it's reasonable. And that's why we're still here. That's why Gaspari can still grow.
Now, you're 55 years old. What is Rich Gaspari doing in 25 years?
Wow, 25 years. I don't know. I'm doing it 25 years.
I think everybody...
I think I should be retired on an island, enjoying myself. Like I do want to grow this brand and I want to pass it on. I don't think I'm going to pass it on to my daughter. She's 11. But, I do want to eventually retire, enjoy, life. I don't think I'm ever going to do nothing, because I think once you do nothing is when when people say you die, you just always have to keep your mind busy, your body busy. So, I definitely
think you and I should create like the old guy retired, like, I don't want to do juice anymore division. I want to look awesome and feel awesome, but I don't want to do juice anymore.
Yeah.
I think we'd all compete in it, man. Because I think underneath we still have that Warriors mentality where, like, I want to do something really hard, but at the same time, I know I can't compete in that shit. Like, I think it'd be fun for us to create some unique competitive environment where I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there that are
definitely
still have the Warriors mentality.
I mean, I love to train. I still train hard. It's funny because let me go say 5 years ago, I would train. One of the guys who trains crazy is Branch Warren.
Yeah.
I mean, he would actually hurt me because but I keep up with him. He's like, he would do something, put on heavier weights, and I would do it. And he's like, what the fuck? Why are you doing this? I said, Branch, if I was in my 20s, I'd kick your ass.
I'd kick your ass.
Get mad at me.
Destroy you. Yeah, so you and I'll get some workouts in, man. I believe it will be a very, very different
That's
challenge.
what I heard. I said you're going to put me through some pain, which I'd give it a try.
It'll be a different level of pain, and it'll take a different level of focus. And that's why my training is hard. It's not because it's necessarily physically hard. Of course, it's physically hard, but it's mentally way more challenging than because
I like that. I like mental challenging.
Rich, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Man.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
To do this. And
what's the products that people can look forward to from Gaspari coming out?
Come to our website, GaspariNutrition.com. We just launched an egg protein, proven egg. It's a pure egg white protein, no artificial sweeteners. We're using stevia, natural cocoa. We're coming up with another flavor, salted caramel. It's all natural flavoring, all natural sweeteners. We have another product called out proven EAAs, which are basically essential amino acids with fermented branch chains. So we're coming up with a lot of products that are going to be new and revolutionary. You talked earlier about collagen health, for joints. We're coming up with a bone broth collagen. So we're offering that as another product. The legacy products still do very well. The Super Pump Max, Sizon, Anavite, Myofusion, those are all the
Super
products.
Pump was always one of my favorite products, man.
It still does great. It's still a product that's great. We're coming up with a new one soon. Look for it. Super Pump Aggression is going to be coming. So that's going to be, something that you're going to want to use. It's got nootropics. It's going to be a very powerful product.
Very, very cool. And I think you had IsoFuse. Is that
IsoFusion?
IsoFusion.
We have right now a product that
chocolate peanut butter. Used to be like my cheat meal when I would live with Kathy.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Remember I lived with Kathy.
Friends. Yeah, she was my athlete. Yep.
Yeah, so she'd bake me these 2 scoops of whey protein with like 40 pounds of ice, and she'd blend it. It was like ice cream.
Yeah.
Like my cheat meal when I'm dieting. So
she still uses my products to this day.
I used to represent Gaspari. Don't worry about it. Just behind the scenes a little.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate
it's been
your time.
a pleasure.
You're a massive inspiration for me, and you will continue to be for a lot of people, man. So
thank you.
Keep doing what you do.
Good.
Thanks, brother. All right, boys and girls, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here. I'm truly grateful for you giving me your time. And I hope you enjoyed the chat with Rich Gaspari. Obviously, as you can see, Rich is a gentleman. I mean, he's a great guy. He was a great athlete, great motivation, because he's got the mindset of a champion, right? When you succeed in one thing, you're going to succeed in other things because you learn how to push yourself. You learn how to not make excuses. You learn how to take ownership for your life. So stop sitting around and wasting time and making excuses as to why you can't, and get your ass out there and do it. And I'm here to support you guys every single step of the way. Subscribe to the podcast. I can't wait to let you guys hear the next episode coming at you, which is going to blow you away. muscleintelligence.com coming at you, and head over to iTunes right now. Subscribe, leave us a review. Muscle Intelligence Podcast. Ben Pakulski out.
Thank you so much for tuning into Muscle Intelligence. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with at least one person you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pakulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.